Welcome to the Backyard Professor Chess videos, where you get good instructions on chess games and chess strategy and chess tactics, and you get to see a beginner, me, progress through my knowledge. I have a great video to show you tonight. I played a game against my Shredder chess app at the rating of 1540. So this is exciting for me. I'm finding out that it is possible to improve in our chess as we study the master games, as we learn chess strategy, as we practice and puzzle over chess tactics. I'm playing the white pieces, Shredder is the black pieces. I do a queen pawn opening. I'm practicing this opening fairly regularly. I'm kind of getting the hang of it. Now I've been playing my Shredder chess app at 1600 also, and that's not that far beyond the 1540 and 1560 that I've just recently been playing it. And at 1600 I'm doing okay. I'm not getting completely wiped off the board like I was 6 months ago. So this is exciting. I'm showing you guys through my journey, through my blood, sweat, and tears of studying and practicing, that like me, you too can do this. I promise. Here we have a fabulous center argument. Typical center argument in the queen pawn opening. The idea is who gets to control the center. Every good game of chess we ever play is going to involve us controlling the center, whether through direct occupying it or influencing it from a distance. The idea is controlling the center gives you maximum mobility and coordination. That's why I emphasize it in pretty much every game, because you won't find a master or a grandmaster game that wins the game without utilizing the center. That is one major key for your chess tournament play. Here we're having a battle. I have seen games where they continue on either pushing the e3, supporting their center pawn. This also, the advantage of this move is it opens up this bishop for this diagonal in case the black pawn swaps the white pawn. This also opens up the knight to come into here in case he has brought out his bishop. If he's open to brought out his bishop and pinning the knight, this knight can replace that knight if the bishop chooses to take the knight, and it avoids a doubled up pawn. So these are some of the themes that occur with the queen pawn opening. I have seen many master games do it both ways. They'll either keep continuing developing and allow black to exchange that pawn, or they take that pawn. I have discovered that my chess game, for me, and this doesn't mean there's only one correct way to play a chess opening. I'm not advocating that. Not at all. There's thousands of ways to play chess openings. In this particular opening, I am discovering something that is very helpful for me. I like to take that pawn. Now, there's times when they'll push either the c pawn or the e pawn. Either way, I don't care which pawn they push. I find when those pawns lock horns, I like to take that pawn. And I know it's another pawn move, and I know that it's not a developing move, but he also takes the pawn. What this does is it allows me to grab the C file. And you say, well, that might allow black to grab the C file. Yes, it could. But like Gary Kasparov, I like getting my rooks into play before my opponents, if it is at all possible to do. Right? Oh, no, I can't do that. Oh, yes, I can. I was illustrating something there. My bishop comes up here to put the pin on the knight, even though it's not a pin yet. It's not a real pin. This bishop comes out to g4. He does pin my bishop, my king pawn to my queen here. So this is a legitimate pin. Mine isn't necessarily a technically vital one. At this point, it's okay with me to put my knight here. It's unlikely that he'll take this knight. I doubt it very much. If he does, I have him covered. I'm not too worried about it. You notice we are swiftly developing. This is another major key to improving our chess tournament play and improving our chess for our chess clubs, or improving our chess so that we can either trounce Dad or Sister Susie or Grandma Grumpy or whoever, right? Now I push this pawn. Pushing this pawn allows me to strengthen the center. It opens up the diagonal for my bishop. It also gives me a chance, because of that, to castle. The other thing I want you to notice that I've noticed in a lot of the master games. At one time when I was practicing this opening, I wasn't doing this. And now because I've been practicing studying the other games, this has started to improve my chess. Here's one factor that has caused me to improve my chess. It's a general principle, but it's one you're going to want to absolutely pay attention to as you can. It's always a good idea to put your bad bishop outside of that pawn chain. I promise, I see this done all the time in the master games. That is another important key for you. Now, I push my pawn to e3 to support my center. He pushes his pawn to e6 to support his center. He also opens up the diagonal for his king bishop so that he also can prepare to castle. This is a good, solid opening by both of us at this point. I tighten up the screws just a smidgen. I decide, let's see what you're going to do with that bishop. He takes the knight. Now, when he takes this knight, what he has done is he has helped eliminate my influence on e5 and d4. That's where the knight was going. Well, as well as g5 and h4, right? So now my influence on these squares are less now than they used to be. I don't double up my pawns. I don't break up my kingside pawns by taking with the pawn. I retake with my queen. I want to keep my pawns intact as long as I can because, quite frankly, I'm a little spooked. I'm playing it at 1540, the second highest rating that I've ever played my Chess Shredder app. So I know he's going to play solid, and look at him. Look at him. He's got a knight, he's got a great center, he's got a bishop, he's got another knight, he's ready to castle. He's not mamby-pambying around making 4 and 5 moves with just one piece, making a one-piece attack, trying to saunter the knights down into here. Not at all. The other nice thing this pawn move did for me, challenging that bishop on that pin, is it now also acts as a limitation to his knight. Not that he's going to pull the knight down here now because my queen's here, but it does limit the influence of his knight. See that? And that's kind of nice. Now, look. He moved his bishop past here. You'll see in the games that sometimes they will pull the bishop here to take the pin off the queen because they want to bring the queen out into here somewhere. A5 or B6 or even to C7. So in order for them to move that queen, they have to break that pin. One way they do that is with this bishop, but he chose to put his bishop here, so I'm going to immediately pounce on this and take that knight. My suspicion is that he will retake with his pawn and not his queen because I don't think he wants to play without the queens. Now if he does, that's fine. He did take with the pawn, but if someone does want to play without their queens and they swap your queens, then this is where the knowledge of understanding your minor pieces becomes extremely critical, right? A closed board would mean it favors knights. An open board with no pawns in the center means it favors bishops. So what do you see on this board right now? At this point, the knights would seem to be doing very well if they got out in that field, right? It's not a very wide open board. Now the pawns aren't locked. There are opportunities to open up the chessboard through various pawn moves. I can press this pawn. He can press this pawn so that we can open up some files, right? So we each now have a bishop and a knight, a bishop and a knight. So there's no huge minor pieces difference. The differences in the positions are my queen is a little bit better developed than his queen, but he has his minor pieces out, whereas only one of mine is out. The other imbalance that I can notice here, as far as space is somewhat even at this point. He does have a huge weakness here. He has taken with this pawn. This makes the dark square complex in this side weak. That automatically gives you your plan. You now have targets. Go get them. Truly. From here on out, there's no question of, well, gee, what do I do? You've got targets. Go get those targets. This is how the masters and grandmasters play their chess. I've played enough that I can see exactly what they're doing. So, it's time for me to bring my bishop up so I can also castle, develop the entire army. He pushes the pawn, so that gives me a chance to have a more superior development. He has weaknesses absolutely all over the place on this side. I now know what side I'm going to play, and I know exactly which squares I'm going to target. Isn't that nice? I mean, for real, seriously. It's very nice. First, I want to develop my whole army before I get into a kingside attack. Now, you remember some of my earlier videos I said you can't just kingside attack because you want to. The board has to say so. This board says do it. Because of those weak squares and my open file. And you say, well, hey, he could also get that open file. That's correct. He certainly can. My file isn't open yet, but that's an open file and a huge weakness. Does he ever choose to castle kingside? But for now, I want my whole army into this. So I grab the file with my rook. I want to develop every piece. This is another very powerful key for us. Truly. Now, he's bringing his queen up to here. Now, it's obvious he's targeting my weaknesses. He also is looking for targets, right? This is how you want to play. I have targets in the form of squares. Now, when you look at the pawns are not weak. Even though they're doubled pawns, he's moved it up here. It's influencing the center, absolutely. So you can't say his pawns are weak, but his squares are. Absolutely. And I know I'm making a big whoop-de-doo about this, because I promised you guys I would share good chess instruction as I'm learning it and as I'm playing it, and this is what you want to watch for. This chessboard says, go for the king if you so desire. Now at this point, he's in the center, right? But I don't want to do it prematurely without every piece in this game. All I have left to do to castle, right? It's very important that we see this. Here, we know the queen's going to take that. Now, Silman has noted that if you pay attention to every threat your opponent makes, you will be playing reaction chess. You won't go with your plan, you will kind of fall into playing his game. But I don't want him to obliterate my queen side. Why let him take the pawn? Here's what I observe. I have the open file. Would it be wise to cover that pawn? No. Why? Because I'm moving a piece twice, and it's moving back and forth, and I'm just not going to do that. The rook belongs on open files, not in a passive defensive role. So I don't want to do that. Do I push to protect that pawn? The problem with that move, so far as I can tell, is now he does this. And now I do this. And now he brings his queen in, or his knight in. And he's got another target here that I created a weakness with. Or if his knight's here, he hits my bishop. You see, the more I try to react to him and do something to protect my weaknesses all the time, the less chance I have of following up on his weaknesses. You see that? I just want to point that out to you. It is very tempting. What if I did this? To block out that bishop and the knight. Then the queen takes this. And my knight and my bishop is vulnerable to further combinations of pieces. So what do? I've given you the hint, and I've hit it on purpose. I want to go after his weaknesses. He is coming on the attack. I am going to come on the attack. Now, he really does take the B pawn. Dag nabbit. And I've played games, and I've seen this done in chess games and chess tournaments, where once a queen comes down here and starts taking pawns on the queen side, and he has a knight and a bishop and other pawns, they just obliterate the queen side. And I don't know if I want that to happen, but she's got the B pawn. So what do? Castle. My rook is undefended. That's the last thing I do to develop my entire army, so I do so. Now I'm covered. The rooks are connected. My rook's on an open file guarding my knight. My knight is guarding my pawn. My bishop is unprotected, but the queen can't get to her right now. Or get to it right now, right? Okay, so I castle. What does my opponent do? Watch. This is so cool what my opponent does. His last piece, besides castling, and he puts that on the file also to challenge my rook on the file. You notice he's not leaving anything undeveloped either. He has my weaknesses, he had targets, and he took them. Right? What if I do this? The problem with that is that really opens up my king side bad, and he has access to an open file with the rook. So that's really not that good of a move either. What if I push my pawn here? I have it covered with my knight and bishop, right? But that gives him too much connected, powerful pawns in the center. That really isn't going to do anything except chase my knight and bishop away, and I'm going to lose central influence because I gave up that central pawn. I also By pushing a pawn like this, I weaken this pawn. Every time you push a pawn forward, you leave weak squares behind. So pushing that pawn is not much of an option. At this point in time, one of Silman's teachings came to my mind. And I said, hey, let me calculate. Let me look around here. In order to... Now, he has played this opening, in my opinion, quite decently. In order to get to the king. Now, this particular board calls for a kingside attack. The weaknesses are over here, so I'm trying to hint at what I'm going to do. But in order to get there, and this is one of the hardest lessons for we amateurs to figure out, according to what Silman says. And he shows this time and again in his books, especially The Amateur's Mind. In order for me to get the initiative, I have to sacrifice a piece. What I'm going to do is I'm going to swap the imbalances. I'm going to sacrifice material, which is so hard to do, in favor of getting the initiative. That is, I get to dictate the tempo of the game by making a sacrifice. The question is, which piece? Do I bring the knight up to here and take that pawn, and he retakes there? Let's say I did that. This is what I was trying to envision. Then, that gives me this target right here. And I've got my bishop backing my queen, right? So that's one option. The better option I liked was the bishop sacrifice. I liked this very much, what I saw. So I took it with the bishop. And you say, so you're going to sacrifice a bishop to get the initiative? Yes, I am. His center appeared to be solid, but that was an illusion. You notice something? Because I am over here attacking weaknesses. I've done a sacrifice to create more weaknesses. Now he's got a weak pawn here. He's got a weak pawn here. His bishop is virtually unprotected. His rook is virtually unprotected. He hasn't castled. And his queen is way down here in the middle of absolutely nowhere, and she's unprotected. He's very uncoordinated. He doesn't have any oomph to any type of an attack. He has taken one weakness of mine. Because of my sacrifice of the bishop, I have eliminated his center power. Isn't that neat? That's kind of cool to see. Now he castles. And he has to, because I have too much options. I have an option of getting the rook, so on and so forth. There's too many targets there, so he castles. Now, from this point on, I was actually able to calculate the 6 or 7 moves to the checkmate. And this is one of the things that really excited me about this game. I am not a good calculator any more than I am a good tactician, but I'm working on it. And step by step by step by step, I'm climbing the mountain of knowledge, and I'm beginning to see things clearer. My vision is less cloudy. From here on, I was able to calculate the checkmate. I have a target here, if I so desire, to push my rook up. Right? I have a target here, if I so desire, to chase that bishop. right? I can virtually force the exchange of that knight if I wish to, right? But I have even a better target. With my knight, I come to here, right? He's pressing his queenside pawn. Because of the nature of this board, I see that as desperation. I see that as a chance to, he's trying to distract me, so to speak, from doing what I'm going to do, but I see it like a laser. Now watch. Because I didn't get involved in reacting to his attack, right, on my one mere weak pawn, because I didn't start moving stuff over here and trying to counteract and let him bring his pieces over, now I can go check. King comes up. Queen goes over. Check. King goes back. You see what I'm going to do? The next move is a very simple move. It's interesting how the two pieces, the queen and the knight, are so vastly better coordinated than his queen and knight. His knight and bishop are not converging on common squares. His rook is on a file that he hasn't been able to use because I've got his knight pinned as far as that goes. His queen has been sitting down here for many, many moves, virtually out of play. She can't possibly come into the protecting the king, so I know I have a move. It's a simple queen move right to there. My focal point, my target, is h7. There's only one move he can do to prevent it. He puts the queen there. So I take the queen with my rook. He gave me a queen because the queen was the only thing protecting h7. There's literally nothing now he can do to stop my checkmate. So he comes to here, and I go checkmate. Now you guys, and I've said this in the last few recent videos because I'm noticing something. I couldn't have played this game 6 months ago. Through the blood, sweat, and tears, through the continued effort of trying to just take a few minutes and do just a couple of extra tactics a day, or taking that extra few minutes and going through just one more master game instead of just one a day, try to do 2, etc. Because I've been putting in just that little bit of extra effort, I'm beginning to see how they play, what squares their queen moves on or moves to in relationship with the knight when you're attacking a king. All of this, from the knight to here, taking that pawn, coming to here, going to check, my queen coming over to here and taking that pawn, every one of those moves I've seen in the master games. So I knew exactly how and what to attack. You notice where my pieces ended up? On the weak squares. Because that pawn was gone, those were my target, and I went after them systematically. So there's your chess exercise. I hope you'll enjoy this video. I hope you've enjoyed the video. That has a lot of good instruction. You notice how my center chain of pawns ended up in the game? I had the complete control of the center. I had every piece of mine being used as he did. He didn't leave anything out either. So it was a whole army to a whole army. I focused on the weaknesses. I went for the weaknesses, and it paid. So I'm happy about this. I don't know enough yet, but I'm getting there. And so can you. Well, that's one reason why I'm making these videos. There's some excellent chess instruction in that game because it's the information that I am learning from the masters and grandmasters. So, hope you enjoyed the video. Happy checkmating, happy chess exercising, And thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.